Hi, I'm Daniel McIver, and this is Queer Joy, the PTP Pink Awards 2024. Join us as we celebrate the champions and changemakers of the inaugural year of these new awards for queer excellence. This episode, Jeremy Dutcher and two spirited people of the First Nations. When I was first brought on to help produce the award ceremony and its content, there was one champion already in place, Jeremy Dutcher. I had been aware of Jeremy as a Polaris Prize winning musician, an outspoken queer comrade. His pronouns are he, they, or nikom in his language, Wolastoqey. And as a fellow East Coaster. He was born and raised in New Brunswick in Wolastoqey, colonially known as Fredericton, and the Tobique First Nation. I was also aware of his determined work to revitalize the Wolastoqey language, but it wasn't until I got lost in Motewolonuwok, his 2024 Polaris-winning album, an unprecedented second Polaris Prize for an artist, that I really understood the power of his art. It's an amazing piece of work, and in fact, his single, Bamasuwanawoog, Wanakea or People Are Rising, ended up on my end-of-year list on my music app as one of my most played songs of the year. This is Jeremy performing that song at the Pink Awards in November of 2024 in Toronto. To talk with Jeremy is to be struck by his warmth. Despite his movie star good looks and reputation as a fashion icon, he emanates a deep-hearted down-to-earthness. And his activism is like that too. It is ever-present but never heavy, always looking forward and focused on opportunity. This is Jeremy after a live studio performance at KEXP Public Radio in Seattle.
Let's start getting creative about reimagining what seats of power actually look like. You know, as a matriarchal people, it looks very different from what's going on right now. Like maybe we need to abolish these governments and just put some grandmas, you know, some matriarchs, just let them drive the bus for a while.
I first had the opportunity to talk to Jeremy while he was doing an artist residency on Fogo Island in Newfoundland, and then later I talked with him while he was sitting on the back fire escape at his home in Montreal. This is that conversation. I was recently listening to the interview you gave after the live concert at the NPR station in Seattle.
At KEXP?
Yeah, and I loved how you described what you do.
Oh, God, what did I say?
I play the piano and do some singing. It's a bit of an undersell.
Well, let me tell you, because we have this thing called the law of humility. This is like a fundamental teaching, and so I have to honor that all the time. So yeah, sometimes I minimize maybe what I do, or what did I say again? I play some piano and do some singing.
You said I play the piano and do some singing.
That might be my new bio line.
Okay. I wanted to start by talking about your own journey in coming to terms with your queer identity, meeting your Indigenous identity.
Oh, Daniel, you're starting with the small questions, eh?
I know.
Just the easy, over-the-plate ones.
Well, no, I mean specifically in terms of as you talked about before, the challenges for queer and Indigenous youth generally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because it's such a critical time, being a youth and trying to figure out how you fit, where you fall in this big human story. I always think about the limits of our language are the limits of our mind. You know, until we can name it, until we can speak about it, we can't really understand it. So it wasn't until I started to meet other people that sat at that intersection between Indigenous identity and LGBT identity, you know, two-spirit people, that it really kind of came home to me that, yeah, there's a way to integrate all of you. You don't have to choose. You don't have to separate yourself.
In the KEXP interview, you talked about respecting the teaching of balance. This feels like that.
Right. When we think about balance and when we talk about balance, I think as middle people, as people who sit maybe even in between genders, or we have a lot to offer the human family when it comes to balance. Because so many of us have those balance of the masculine and the feminine inside of ourselves, you know? And so I think it's a beautiful gift that our queer kin can offer to everyone, is to seek that balance, you know, and find, you know, so there's this, we're reaching towards each other, I think, all the time, everybody. But I think it's the queer people, it's the middle people that have that gift. We're born with that, you know? And it's the world of you know, homophobia and transphobia and, you know, dogmatism that takes us away from that teaching.
And so what is it that we offer, practically offer the human family?
The truth is that queer people are in every facet of every way of being. And we've hidden that to think like, oh, gay only looks like this, or like lesbians only look like this. And we've narrowed ourselves into these boxes. That's why I like using the word queer, because I think it's this beautiful umbrella that can hold us all and all of those diverse experiences within us. But it is that because, and that's our strength, it's because rainbow people are coming from every nation, every occupation, every vocation, every denomination, you know, it's like we are everywhere. And so when we come together as those people from every corner, those conversations that we can have are really generative and are really unique. So I think that's one of our collectivity and how we come together. Outside of our, you know, cultural community or religious community, we find our own way together. And I think through that, we weave our experiences in a way that makes us really strong as a community.
So you talk about the middle people, and the middle is something, a place we can be born into, but is it something that we should be all striving toward?
You know, I think it goes back to that understanding of balance, that, you know, when we are too much in one direction, we're outside of the truth. So I think where we can offer that light to people is to say that there's beauty in the middle, and there's a lot of, if we're only listening to either end of that spectrum, then we're really missing so much in between. So I think we just have to keep insisting on our middleness, you know, or our refusal to choose. Like, I think, you know, those non-binary kin are some of the most brave, you know, because they're really stepping outside of a whole system that we've constructed as humans.
Something that came up when we talked when you were on Fogo Island was the most basic binary to smash was the binary of knowing and not knowing.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Right. Or good and evil is another one of those. We have this tendency to boil down our experience into this and that and black and white and good and evil. And those binaries, I think we're in a time when, and it is those non-binary people that are leading the way and showing us that actually to choose another way is a very valid choice, and maybe the most valid choice. That's another gift that we offer to people.
Something else that we talked about in that Fogo conversation was the use of 2S in the LGBTQ plus acronym. Like, so how, when considering the expansiveness of two-spiritedness, that usage can be reductive?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's this tendency to be reductive when we want to be inclusive. So we say, oh, well, we really want to do two-spirit work, and we want to, you know, include Indigenous people in this LGBT work we're doing. So we put a 2S in our acronym, and which is, it's a symbol, but if it's not backed up by real consideration and work, I feel like it loses the spirit of the gesture. So I hope that we can go past tokenism and really start to work together. But in my mind, it all comes down to relationships and relationship building. And if we're not actually going to where Indigenous people are, you know, coming to our gatherings, showing up, you know. I always say, you know, anywhere in North America, anywhere on Turtle Island that you go to any major city, and you're going to be close to a reservation. You're going to be close to a place where Native people gather. So I think it's really important for all of us, even newcomers who just arrived here, to go get to know your neighbors, get to know the people of this place. And in our languages that come from this land, there's a lot of teachings and understandings that I think can benefit all of humanity. And Two-Spirit and that middle path is one of those ways, I think. So if you want to be an ally, it's got to go further than just speaking it. We got to actually show up for each other and get to know each other.
After the break, we'll meet Jeremy's changemaker. This is Queer Joy, celebrating the champions and changemakers of the 2024 PTP Pink Awards, and I'm Daniel McIver.
The 2024 PTP Pink Awards was made possible by the generous support of our sponsors, and we are deeply grateful for the generosity of our title sponsor, Decium, the Abnormal Beauty Company. Thanks to Sarah Frumstein and the entire Decium team.
Welcome back to Queer Joy. I'm Daniel McIver, and this is Jeremy Dutcher at the 2024 PTP Pink Awards.
When I first moved to this place, my mother, she said, now when you go meet the native people. She's like, that's the first thing you do when you go somewhere new, you go meet your new hosts. And so I started to look into Native organizations here in the city. Even just to see the name of this organization on a poster is a statement of self-determination, that we are here, and that queer people, Two-Spirit people, LGBT, Indigenous people, have a place in our community. I heard this beautiful quote once. It said, the place where discriminations meet is a dangerous place to live. And so when we talk about people living at the intersection of queer identity, of Indigenous identity, those are people that need a lot of support. And this organization particularly has been a light. And so when I first went to that organization, it was like the first week I moved here. I was like in my early 20s. I was super nervous. I knew one person in town. But I went to that organization, and there was about a staff of less than 10. And I was like just talking to the organization tonight. They have more than 80 staff now. So this is a yeah. I don't want to talk too much. I want to just invite them up. Please welcome tonight our representatives from Two-Spirit people of the First Nations. Give it up.
Two-Spirited People of the First Nations is a Takaranto, or colonially Toronto-based organization that describes itself as helping two-spirited people to nurture and grow within their sacred roles and celebrate their strengths, and to provide physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual advocacy and support to community members who are facing the effects of historic and ongoing colonial violence so that they may thrive within their communities and nations. Multidisciplinary Two-Spirit artist Tyler J. Sloan spoke with Two-Spirited People of the First Nations at their office in downtown Toronto.
Hi, my name is Denise McLeod. I'm the board president of Two-Spirited People of the First Nations. I am Anishinaabe from Sagamuk Anishinaabe First Nations. I am Eagle Clan. I use she and her pronouns.
My name is McCrady. I also go by Motewolonuwok. I'm from Bijatwawik, Sami Anishinaabe. I'm an Ojibwe and Cree. I'm part of the Bear Clan. And my role here at Two-Spirited People of First Nations is the executive director. I have no preferred pronouns, which is very different than I go by all pronouns. It's a way to honor me knowing that English isn't our chosen language.
Tyler asked Keith and Denise how they felt about Jeremy choosing Two-Spirited People of the First Nations as his changemaker.
Well, when I first heard this, I was obviously quite excited. I'm actually a huge music fan, so I was quite excited because I own their vinyl. But also, one of the key things for an organization is to have unrestricted funds. And, it's pretty important to be able to have access for self-determination.
I know Jeremy from Community, and I love their music and also own their albums. And Jeremy is such a huge supporter and very well-spoken, outgoing advocate for Two-Spirit people and for the Indigenous community as a whole. So Jeremy said something 6 or 7 years ago at this point, and it was be ready for the Indigenous Renaissance. And I remember thinking, like, one, yes. And two, I used that sentence so much when I was teaching and talking about how all of the things that I'm teaching you, or all of the trauma that Indigenous peoples have experienced, it's also we're also thriving. We're also building and making and creating. And, Indigenous folks are often painted as we're very old time or primitive, or we don't have the same skills to be artists as the West. And Jeremy took all of the things that the West taught them and blew it out of the water and made it. The first album is so important. I'm not Mi'kmaq. I don't speak the Mi'kmaq language. I know that Anishinaabe is under the same language umbrella, but it felt new and exciting. I just think about that time, really important time where the Renaissance is happening, this Indigenous Renaissance.
That first album of Jeremy's that Denise is talking about is Loastwig Lintuagunaway, that Jeremy's website describes as a post-classical rearrangement of traditional music that Jeremy rediscovered at the Canadian Museum of History. From 1907, these were wax cylinders of his ancestors singing forgotten songs of the Wolastoqiyik Nation. The Guardian describes the album as avant-garde neo-opera. It was heralded internationally, won Jeremy his first Polaris Prize, and set the stage for Jeremy working with colonial, perceived urban notions like opera inside explorations of his own ancestors and land-based culture, and as Denise said, blowing the old ideas out of the water. Keith had this to say about Jeremy's two-sided perspective.
Finding ways to connect with the urban community, but also still, connect with the Indigenous community is a challenge. And so I'm really happy that someone with Jeremy could say, you get to do whatever you want, you can do whatever you want. You could pick things that you like of the Western world, but you could still honor your own traditions and your own language and your own values.
So part of the Indigenous Renaissance is embracing what Indigenous people have called two-eyed seeing, living inside Indigenous knowledge and using what's useful from the colonization project to move forward inside this system. And part of that moving forward is understanding how two-spiritedness exists inside the LGBTQ plus acronym. Not only is there a question about reductiveness and false equivalencies, two-spiritedness is a broader idea than strictly sexuality or gender, as people also argue transness is, and two-spiritedness itself is a fluid idea. Denise had this to say about her journey.
My understanding of my own two-spiritedness, it has been an evolution. I always knew that I was queer and understood two-spirit to be a role in community. And I was, at the time, when I started figuring out my gender and my identity, my sexual identity, I knew that two-spirit was a role within community that I didn't want to pick up. That wasn't I did not want to do that right away. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for this responsibility. And also understanding that two-spirit means something different to everyone. And that's okay. Like, there are no wrong teachings. There are no bad teachings. There are only teachings. And so for me, I do define myself as two-spirited in a way that is more my sexuality based rather than my gender. And also understanding that, over the last 10-ish years, there have also been other terms that have been started to be coined in English to define the intricate relationship between indigeneity and our queerness. That, we have been told that it was always something to be ashamed of, or that it didn't exist prior to colonization, when we know that's absolutely incorrect. And I really enjoy that we are starting to find different ways to identify ourselves as queer, gay, lesbian, trans, Indigenous people.
As I said off the top, Jeremy was the first champion to come on board with the Pink Awards. He was the first to say yes. With his belief in us came confidence, and helped us to realize a very special event, a very special moment of joy for our community. Thanks for walking with us, Jeremy. Thanks to Amelia Moses in Montreal and Tyler J. Sloan in Toronto. Please join us for our next episode with warrior activist Latoya Nugent and her changemaker Among Friends. I'll leave the last words to Denise and Keith. This has been Queer Joy. Thanks for listening.
Wenibajo, Gwenanongan Nukwe, Indigenous Cost, Megazena Dodam, Sakamakandunjabat, Garanto, Indunji, Anishinaabe Kwe, Ndao, Nijik Manadoag, Ndao. I introduced myself in the language so that our ancestors know that we are still here. My government name is Denise McLeod, and I am the board president, and I'm honored to share the stage with Keith, the executive director.
So I'm Keith, and I'm really happy to be here. So since I've been at this agency, I haven't really had a chance. It's been 6 years, and there's been a lot of growth and a lot of change, and I haven't had a chance to be proud. And so I'm very proud, and I'm proud of our community. I'm also proud to have people to look up to, like Jeremy, who really understand what it takes to be successful in a system that was built to make us fail. I can't pretend that this was made for us, and we're going to still thrive. And we're going to say, if you want to work with us, great. If you don't, just get out of the way, right? Because we're really ready to do the work. And so I just appreciate everyone here tonight that honors and respects that.
Queer Joy is a production of Pink Triangle Press.